The winter 2020 anime season has come to an end. Let's talk about it. Actually, before we get started, I want to let you know that a few of the shows I want to talk about have one episode left, mainly like Haikyuu or something. So unless it all turns out to be a dream inside Hinata's mind and it's revealed in this season's final episode, I think we're going to be alright. Let's start with my favorite show of the season. That's right, I don't leave stuff till the end. I want to talk about id Invaded, and I did not expect to like this show as much as I did, mainly because, as you can tell from the title, that it's id Invaded. They're invading ids. This is a huge Sigmund Freud reference, because the id is like your subconscious, and I hate it when shows reference Sigmund Freud, just because it's so played out, and whenever they do it, it feels so lazy. Like, Sigmund Freud is like 1970s, like, this is old hat in terms of psychology. Why not talk about something new within the field of psychology, huh? Why do you gotta keep dragging out Sigmund Freud's corpse? It is so played out. I'm so done with the whole Sigmund Freud stuff. So I was really surprised when I liked id Invaded as much as I did. So id Invaded is about people invading ids. They're invading people's subconscious. So why are they invading people's subconscious? Is this like a Persona 5? Well, this is actually more like they're going into people's minds to solve murder mysteries. They're entering the murderer's mind, and the murderer's mind is like super like weird and screwed up, and they solve a murder inside the murderer's mind. So they don't actually solve the murder that's happening in real life. They just solve a murder that's happened inside the murderer's mind, and through that they gain clues as to how the murderer commits his murders. Right now, you might be thinking, well, what difference does that make between them solving murders inside someone's mind and them solving murders, somewhere else? Actually, it makes all the difference, because in another show that's actually airing this season, another detective show about murders called Kabukicho Sherlock, they kind of fall into the pit trap that id Invaded avoids in a very smart fashion. Because when you play Danganronpa, when you do anything that's like murder mystery-ish, you always get these weirdest forms of logic that make no sense. Like, sometimes the way the detective figures things out just is insane leaps of logic. Like, the character will walk in and he'll be like, there seems to be peanuts on that bedside cabinet. We know that the murderer is actually not allergic to peanuts, and through that I have deduced that the murderer is in fact you. Like, the murderer being insane is fine. I expect him to be insane, but I don't expect a detective to be also insane. id Invaded avoids all of these pitfalls by just putting it inside someone's mind. It's in someone's dream. They can do the craziest stuff possible. Like, one murderer, he rotates a platform. Like, wouldn't you notice that the floor is rotating beneath you? There's water on it. You can clearly tell by the Coriolis effect that the floor is rotating. I can just ignore all of that crazy stuff happening and just pretend, because they're all in the dream, right? You can just explain away, like, oh, they didn't notice the Coriolis effect, or they didn't notice the floor was rotating, because precisely they are in a dream. And when you're in a dream, you don't notice crazy stuff like that. You probably think this is a cop-out, but this honestly makes all the difference. It's great. I love it. So let's talk spoilers now. The story opens up with Narisago Akihito, and he has the most tragic backstory ever. And his family was murdered in the most brutal way possible, and I was expecting them to kind of pull on our heartstrings and be like, oh no, let's watch them get murdered, oh, it feels so bad, we're gonna make them relive those days. But they didn't do that, and I want to give them props. They give the main character a chance at redemption, and when that chance of redemption is pulled away from him and he overcomes it, I thought that was such a good way. Narisago Akihito's tragic backstory is played out in such a good and fulfilling way, because they could have done the easy route. This show has id Invaded in its name. It's using Sigmund Freud, so I kind of expected them to take the easy way out and just make us relive, the super sad moments, and people would put them in their AMVs. But they actually had the character redeem himself, and he also grew as a person. He's like, hey, I know these things happened, but I gotta move on. And I really, really, really liked that. The next thing I liked a lot about the show is the fact that they had all the murderers kind of tied down to one super murderer who's been instigating all the other murders. And I know this is gonna sound really cheesy, and some people don't like that. I know a buddy of mine who didn't like the fact that all the murderers kind of connected into one super murderer, so it's all been someone's big plan. And I get it, right? I get it. In real life, there's no grand overarching scheme. There's no super villain who's manipulating all the other murderers. It's just spontaneous stuff, and it's not realistic. And I'm like, hey, dude, you're watching anime. What are you expecting? In terms of a story, if you want to tell a good story, this is how you tell it. Some people might say this is cliche, but the reason why it's cliche is because it's good. A lot of stories use it, and I would have preferred this over what Kabukicho Sherlock did, where Kabukicho Sherlock had mystery of the week that's unrelated to the main mystery, and then they hit you with the main mystery at the end, and it feels like there was no build up. It Invaded takes all those other murderers and they all build up towards the final murder. And this is where the show kind of trips. It starts off really good, the middle is really good, the ending for the character arcs are really good, but it trips up in the story department. So this is a murder mystery, right? So you're expecting when they fight the final boss, when they confront him, it's going to be like a mystery. They have to solve this mystery. They have to go through the ids, like other people, other murderers' minds, and kind of solve what's going on. That's what you expect, right? But no, it turns into a shonen anime battle because when they enter someone's mind, they forget who they are. They become brilliant detectives. They become meitante and they get like special powers. So instead of like confronting the murder and being like, it was you, and doing like a, I'm going to explain how I figured this out, or I'm going to solve some mysteries. Instead, what they end up doing is they just fight each other using like shonen anime fisticuffs. And I was just like, this is really unexpected. Like, don't get me wrong, they do outsmart the villain, but there's at least like a good last episode, 30-minute chunk where it turns into a battle shonen where the villain starts explaining he has superpowers and the main characters are like these scrappy underdogs and they're like, we're going to use teamwork and we're going to defeat you because we're working together. And they just do fisticuffs and they use kind of their environment around them. Like they enter different murderers' minds and they use the environment to fight each other. It's not bad. It's not a show ender, but I personally would have enjoyed them solving, more mysteries in their murder mystery show. And the final thing I think the show trips upon is the Kaeru plotline. So when they enter someone's id, when they enter someone's mind, there's this girl and she's always murdered. Her name is Kaeru and she has the power to pull people into her id. And her id is connected to other murderers' ids. So the idea here is she's kind of like this central neural network that everyone kind of connects to and is connected to all other murderers. So that makes, she's like the plot device that drives everything forward. Everything is centered around the Kaeru plotline. The Kaeru plotline is the overarching plotline that all the other murderers have been building towards, and they set it up only to return to the status quo. I will say that if they tried to wrap it up in that last episode, like wrap everything up, it definitely would have felt super rushed, but it also feels like we didn't get the satisfying conclusion that we expected. I'm expecting the show to have another season, at least that's how they set it up, because the main mystery around Kaeru has kind of been solved, but there's no real development. We don't rescue Kaeru. Nothing's really happened. All that we've gotten in this show is the character development around the main cast. Narisago, Akihito, Hondo Machi, Momoki, like all these characters had their character arcs fully developed. Don't get me wrong, these are great character arcs and they're very good and you should watch this show, but the main final ending plotline with Kaeru is left completely unresolved and it's just, we will rescue her, in the far off future of season 2, something like that. They keep the status quo going and they're going to remain brilliant meitante detectives. Also, if I haven't sold you on the show yet, the main character is voiced by Seto freaking Kaiba. I'll give this show a definite go watch it out of 10. And it's got an 8.1 on Mal. So I don't know if you would consider that, influencing your decision. I don't think Mal influences me at all. But, some people, it's worth something to them. Alright, moving on to the next show. I want to talk about To Aru Kagaku no Railgun T. Done by JC staff, so I kind of expected the animation to be terrible because they did Index 3 and then Accelerator was kind of, it was alright, but it turns out that they really enjoyed the Railgun series because they seem to always pour the most budget into the Railgun series. In fact, if I were to recommend someone to watch the To Aru something series, they would probably should start with the Railgun series because the Railgun series has the best pacing, the best animation, and the best OP. Sister's Noise is literally too good. Alright, I'm going to start by giving you some background on my history with the To Aru series. I've seen everything. I have never read the light novel, and I'm a vehement hater on Index 3 because Index 3 is straight up trash. So, a certain scientific railgun T takes place during the same time as To Aru Majutsu no Index 2. So, during Index 2, I believe there's a joke scene, there's a gag episode where during the cultural festival, his parents come visit and they get up to all kinds of hijinks. So, during that time, during that gag episode, Misaka is in fact fighting for her life. As someone who's seen Index 2, this just feels so weird watching To Aru no Kagaku no Railgun T, because since all this takes place during a gag episode, it's just like Toma's off, screwing around, and then Misaka shows up during that episode to do her own tsundere bit, but little does our main character know that she's actually fighting for her life. It kind of changes the whole dynamic of that gag episode. I don't see it as a gag episode anymore. I see it more as a failure on our main character's part to not help a friend in need. Like, he rescued her from Accelerator, he rescued all the other sisters in the previous arc, so why can't, he help her again? Why didn't she just reach out and say, like, hey, can you help me? I need some help. Well, Roion, obviously, the reason why she didn't reach out is because this is the To Aru Kagaku no Scientific Railgun series, not the Index series, which is why he never shows up. Why, yes, viewer, you are absolutely correct, but it doesn't change the fact that I cannot look at Index 2 the same way anymore. Because those haha funny tsundere moments are just completely turned on their head. She's trying to fight for her life. She's trying to save people. And our main character's off, screwing around as usual. What about our boy Accelerator? Our boy Accelerator, he doesn't have like a vested interest in the sisters yet. He doesn't have like the Misaka number 4 as his like groupie yet. So it's kind of okay. It's forgiven. Accelerator has an alibi, but not our main character Toma. Our main character Toma's off having some, funny haha hijinks, while our main character here, Misaka, is, fighting to save people's lives. Also, Index 3 has some huge shakeups to the power structure, the power dynamic of Academy City. So it's so weird. It's surreal watching these two characters that are going to kill each other, talk to each other like friends at this moment in time when you know that one is going to murder the other in absolute cold blood. Anyways, talking about the actual To Aru Kagaku no Railgun T series, there isn't really that much to say. It's more of the same, where Toma's fighting like world-ending disasters, and then you have Accelerator defeating city-ending disasters. We've got Misaka here fighting like third-tier B-rate disasters that won't necessarily end the city or end the world. They'll just make things really, really difficult for her and her friends. Oh, and we also get the Ojo-sama character for the show. We get Misaki, the queen, mental out, Tokidai Queen Shoko, the girl with the weird eyes. She can manipulate people's minds, and you guessed it, she will join Toma's harem. So I'll be looking forward to that in season 4, maybe Index 4, whenever that happens. It'll probably take another 10 years, but it will happen. It's just a matter of time, because I really like her character design. It's one of the better ones that they've come up with. Alright, let's talk about the Reddit darling of the season. There's one every season. Last time it was Dr. Stone. What is it this time? This time it's Eizo-ken, or Hands Off Eizo-ken, or Hands Off the Theater Club. Essentially, this show is a show about making anime. So apparently Eizo-ken was based off this critically acclaimed manga, but this is news to me because I read a lot of manga and I literally never heard of it until now. In fact, it's getting its own live action adaptation, and no, it's not a Netflix adaptation. It's a Japanese adaptation of the anime, and I'm not sure how it's gonna work. In fact, I might watch it just to see how bad it is, because who knows, it may be good, but if it's a show about making anime and they use CGI, I don't think it's that good, right? Because the show really gives off this vibe of their imagination, of how they work hard to kind of create their anime. And it's shown because, it's hand-drawn, or rather, it's animated. But in live action, they're going to use CGI about a show where they make anime. Like, I'm not sure how that's going to work. In fact, it's probably just going to be another soulless live-action adaptation like Saikiksu no Sainan, or maybe even Mob Psycho. Those live actions were pretty bad. But let's actually talk about Eizo-ken. So Eizo-ken is about a group of 3 girls. They form their Eizo-ken, their theater club, and they essentially just make anime. They talk about the trials and tribulations of making anime. They touch on the financial aspect of making anime, making all those Blu-rays, making all those DVDs, having to turn a profit and how expensive it is. They also talk about the imagination, the creativity part of it. It's really well done because whenever they use their imagination, it's drawn as if, it's happening in real life. And it's kind of dorky watching them kind of nerd around. It's really, really enjoyable. Kind of makes me want to reminisce about my high school days. In fact, one of my favorite scenes is the one where Asakusa and Tsubame are just nerding out non-stop, and then you have like Kanamori who's not playing along. She's not having any of it. And then when you look at Asakusa and Tsubame, they're in their own imagination world, and it's like they're in a submarine and they're going along and they're doing the sound effects with their voices. They're like bop 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 when they're like inside the submarine. And then you cut to Kanamori and she's just walking down the street, and you just see Asakusa, Mizusaki, Tsubame rather, they're just kind of screwing around, just like acting like absolute dorks. It's so great. I love it. But this show is like extremely, extremely top heavy in the sense that after you watch maybe the first 4 episodes, maybe after the first bit where Asakusa goes like, oh no, Tsubame isn't my friend, she's my nakama. Translator note, there's no equivalent to nakama in the English language, so we decided to leave the subtitle as nakama. That specific scene where not only Tsubame gets recognized by Asakusa and Kanamori, she also gets recognized by her parents, and her parents accept that she wants to kind of draw anime as her career instead of being an actress. Once you get to that point, you can kind of stop watching, and I think a lot of people kind of drop the show there because there really isn't any drive to watch the next episode. The character arcs kind of feel finished, and from there, it doesn't really change the formula up. It's just more of the same. They don't really face any big hurdles. The show is really just enjoying their imagination and seeing where it goes, seeing where they can take certain things. I kind of expected more of a Shirobako or like a different type of, oh, we have deadlines, we need to draw a certain number of drawings, or how can we solve this issue? We talked about using keyframes and then interpolating between the keyframes. Like, they didn't show any of that. They kind of just do a montage, and then when the montage is finished, like, woo, that was some hard work we did. Yeah, Kanamori, that was some hard work we did. Man, we are so good. For example, at the very end, when the guy sends them the wrong track, or rather he sends them a track that is not what they expected, they have to redraw the entire ending. This is a huge undertaking, and they talk about the kind of techniques they can do to kind of make this a lot more streamlined, and they don't show it at all. They just do kind of a montage, and then flash forward, they're in the booth, they're selling their DVDs, and it's kind of just done that way. I kind of expected more, because it was kind of hyped up as this big cliffhanger, because at the end of episode 11, it's like, oh crap, we got the wrong music, we got to do something. And then in episode 12, it's like, let's get down to business. And then they just have it all finished right away. And what happened to the voice acting? Tsubame was supposed to run voice acting gig, and that kind of went nowhere, because when you watch the final short, there's no voice acting. So where did that plot line go? Maybe I'm just thinking too hard about it. Maybe the whole point of Eizouken is just to enjoy their imagination, enjoy the creative process. Not the hard work that goes into the creative process, but just, the creative process. Don't get me wrong, it probably sounds like I hate this show. I don't hate the show. In fact, I really enjoy it, but I would have liked to see more struggling, if you can consider that, like, not suffering. Like, I would have liked to see more problems that they'd have to overcome, because after episode 6, when Tsubame gets accepted, there really isn't a reason other than their love for making anime to continue going with the story. There really isn't any rising action anymore. There really isn't any big hurdle that they have to overcome. Also, the show might as well be about 3 working adults, because I feel like them being in high school literally adds almost nothing. It adds a little, definitely adds a little, but it doesn't add as much as I thought. It doesn't really impact them, because it's supposed to be a club, right? They're supposed to be doing this for fun, but they seem to be working at it like a job, and there's like some scenes where they're falling asleep in class because that's just how hard they're working. But it's like, their grades just don't matter. Are there no repercussions? Like, how are they going to work through this? Like, even Bakuman, the manga about the guy writing manga, he writes manga, he sacrifices school, his parents like come up to him and they like yell at him. There's all these other extraneous plot lines that kind of affect the creative process. It's not just about the creative process. I really enjoyed this show, so I don't want to end it on a negative note. I really enjoyed Asakusa's voice. Asakusa's voice actress did amazing work in bringing this character to life. I believe it's Saidi. I believe it's like her first ever voice acting gig, and I hope she does more work, because she did a really good job in bringing this character to life. She spoke in like the typical otaku way. She used the word dono, like the prefix dono. She spoke in a very formal way, because that's how otaku talk in Japan. I'm not sure why, but it was really well done. She sounded like a gruff, nerdy female Naruto. Now that I say that out loud, it kind of makes it seem like a diss, but now I really, really enjoyed it. In fact, I would wish I could wake up to that voice every day. The supporting cast was great. The student council, not the student council president, the secretary, I believe, she was really like in your face, and she wanted to like have them abide by the rules, but she wasn't like their antagonist. It's not like she wished them harm. She was just doing her job. I've been really positive so far, so let's kind of change things up a bit, because I want to go negative. I want to talk Magia Record, Mahou Shoujo Madoka, Magica Gaiden. And I'm going to say it right off the bat, if you were looking for like a continuation of the Mahou Shoujo Madoka Rebellion movie, where Homura creates her own pocket dimension and it ends on a huge cliffhanger, well then you're not going to find it here. Instead, this is a spin-off based on the dark powers of gacha. This is a corporate loot box fueled anime, so you know you're not going to get a satisfying ending. You know this. There is no way this anime would ever get a satisfying ending, because if they had a satisfying ending, why would you keep playing the game? So in terms of story, I will talk about it later. It's not very good, and it's really reflected in the Mal score because Mal fans, Madoka fans, they're going to inflate that score. And even with the Madoka fans inflating the score, it's only got a 6 out of 10. So you can see the community not liking it. But before I talk about the story, let's go over the good stuff. The good stuff, of course, being the music. The music's great. It fits the scenes very well. In terms of animation, Shaft blows it out of the water again. You've got a lot of those head-turning movements that they love to do in the original Madoka. A lot of the themes are there. Like, the original style is kept intact, I believe, and it feels really like the original Madoka. It does feel like a continuation. The action scenes are also really well animated. I really enjoyed a lot of the action scenes. There's one action scene that sticks out to me in particular. It's the final action scene that happens in episode 13 where Sayaka is blocking this huge blast with her 2 blades and one of her hands just gets absolutely blown off, and you can see the frames, you can see the bone, you can see the marrow in her bone when her hand gets blown off. And in that split second where her hand gets blown off, she gets a new hand that grows out and she grabs the sword in the hand that got blown up. So she grabs that other sword and goes back to blocking right away. It's a really well animated scene. There are a few kind of iffy scenes here and there, but then you'd be nitpicking at this point. I'd say overall, it's really well animated. The loot box money coming in from the gacha game clearly shows. So that's all the good stuff. The good stuff is pretty much concentrated upon the production value. Stuff you can throw money at. The more money you throw it at, the better it's going to be. But in terms of writing, in terms of story, it's got the community divided. So the story of Magia Record Maho Shoujo Madoka Magica Gaiden is actually kind of retreading a lot of old ground. It does have some suffering moments and it rebuilds up a lot of the stuff that you should already know if you watched a lot of the old series. I think this is supposed to be for new fans, people who maybe picked up the phone game because they go over stuff that you should already know. For example, the soul gem is called a soul gem because it contains your soul, and if you lose the soul gem, you're going to die. Or the fact that Kyubey is evil and he's perpetuating the emotion energy economy, the war economy, the emotion energy economy. We're going to perpetuate it, and I'm going to collect energy for my evil space cat civilization. They retread a lot of story beats that have already been established. So in terms of story, you're not going to find really that much interesting here. And the suffering has really been downplayed. Like, the suffering in Madoka Magica was really intense, but the suffering here is it's not so bad. It could be better, it kind of sucks, but, whatever. So it's only towards the last 3 episodes, I'd say, that things get really, really different from the original series, where they introduce this concept of Uwasa and this concept of Doppels, where they're able to kind of harness their despair power. These magical girls, by harnessing their despair, they're able to not become witches and maintain their magical girl form. So this plot point right here is essentially the main overarching plot point for the entire series, because there's this evil cult that wants to save magical girls by turning them into Doppels. And I'm not sure why they're evil. I'm not sure why they're the evil antagonist, because they're just trying to seize the means of production away from Kyubey, take the magical girl powers back into their own hands and then rise up. Sure, the Uwasas and the Doppels have killed a few people, but you know what? You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. So the plot essentially boils down to they're retreading all the original Madoka stuff, so you're going to be bored to tears if you've seen the original Madoka for like the first 9 episodes, and towards the end they explain that they're going to seize the means of energy production away from Kyubey, put it back into the hands of the magical girls so they don't turn into witches. So that's why I'm not sure why the villains are the villains. I can call them the antagonists, but I don't know why they're evil per se. But I'm not done yet. This season also ends on a cliffhanger. It's kind of left up in the air whether or not Tamaki is alive or not. The main girl, we don't know if she's alive or not. But I swear to God, if the next season starts and it has a new main character and they don't explain if she survived or not, and they kind of do their own thing, and then the main character from season 1 shows up at the very end of season 2, I am literally going to just break every phone I find with Magia Record installed on it. So if you meet me in real life, make sure you don't have Magia Record found on your phone, or I will smash it into the ground if this turns out to be true. Hopefully speaking, I hope they don't pull a Magia Record on Magia Record in Season 2. Hopefully Season 2 kind of brings everything together and explains away all the inconsistencies. But who am I kidding? This is a gacha game. They got to keep the gacha furnace going, so it's probably not going to explain anything. I'll just end it with my general thoughts. I didn't think it was that good. I just marathoned the whole thing after watching maybe 4 or 5 episodes and just being like, it's not that good. But because of the house arrest that I'm under now, I just marathoned the whole thing, and I thought it was at best. If you watch it for the plot, you're not going to find anything, but if you just watch it for some cool magical girl fights, well then, it's serviceable. It's not bad. For my closing thoughts, I just want to talk about the interview that some of you may know about the Rebellion movie, where they interviewed the director and the writer, Gen Urobuchi, and they're like, oh, why'd you do this? Why'd you leave it on a huge cliffhanger? And as it turns out, they weren't going to leave it on a huge cliffhanger. They actually wanted to end it with Homura just being with Madoka for an eternity, which is fine. But they ended it on a cliffhanger because the director was like, look, dude, you should totally make it a cliffhanger so we can make a sequel. And the guy's like, yo, that is a fantastic idea. I hate it. I don't want to do it. But they forced his hand and he ultimately had to do it, which is why Rebellion ended on a cliffhanger. And finally, after waiting 7 years, we get an anime, which is a spin-off. And it's not just any spin-off. It's a spin-off fueled by gacha. So you know it's not going to have a satisfying ending. You know this. And I still watch it. What's wrong with me? Moving along, let's talk about Murensei Seton Gakuen. I was actually really looking forward to this anime, mainly because I've read the manga, and this manga had me just rolling on the floor laughing. This is one of the laugh out loud. This is such a funny manga, and this manga is so funny that I overlooked the fan service. In fact, I didn't notice the show was so fan service heavy until I actually watched the show, because the manga is just so freaking funny. The manga is so funny that I don't even notice the fan service. That's how good the manga is. But when translated to an anime format, I didn't think the jokes were that good. I don't know if it's because I've seen them before or if it's because they just aren't funny. The adaptation isn't bad. It's pretty good. They have a few like reference scenes where they use kind of the music to help. Like there's one scene where our main character Jin has a new type flash moment. I thought that was pretty funny. But overall, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. So the story of Murensei Seton Gakuen is essentially this one guy who's enrolled in a animal school, in a school full of anthropomorphized animals where all the girls look very humanoid, but all the boys look very animal. So essentially every week they introduce a new animal to the cast, they get up to some hijinks, and they give us some trivia on said animal. And for the most part, it works. It works really, really well. In fact, it works too well. This adaptation is too good. In fact, the problem for me is the acting for one character in particular is just too good. I'm talking about the main character, Jin. So Jin is supposed to be this animal hater who's really tsundere for animals, and he's supposed to have like, you know, a gruff exterior but a soft heart type deal. But instead he just comes off as a simp in this adaptation, because when I read the manga, right? When I read the manga and he says stuff like "go away, stupid dog," I don't read it as "go away, stupid dog" in like a harsh manner. I see it more of as an affectionate "go away, I'm tsundere" type deal. But when this guy does the acting, he does it so well. He does the tsundere so well that I don't see the dere and I see all the tsun. It feels like I'm getting a lot of good jokes, and every joke is like punctuated by domestic abuse. In the manga, Jin doesn't seem like that terrible of a person because I can ascribe a personality that I implant onto that character, but this guy's interpretation of the character hurts me. It's not the fact that he's so mean that really ruins it for me, like that it does do a little bit, but it's the fact that he keeps chasing Hitomi so hard. He literally keeps throwing people under the bus so he can get it on with Hitomi, and I get it. It's supposed to be done for laughs, but it's done so seriously by their delivery that I can't accept it for laughs. It looks so serious. It looks too real. Their acting is like for a hardcore drama, or for Jin anyway, instead of for like a comedy series. I think it's ultimately that fact, the one where he keeps, you know, trying to get it on with Hitomi. Like every chance he gets, he'll throw anyone under the bus. He will throw anybody under the bus just if he could spend a few moments with Hitomi. And it just feels so wrong. It just feels so wrong, man. But despite all that, I did really enjoy the show. It's just that one thing that kept bugging me. Like, it kept stopping me from laughing out loud, because every time I was, you know, feeling, you know, you get the grin and then you start laughing. Every time I was about to hit that moment, I would get hit by like serious Jin. And I was like, oh, this is not funny anymore, dude. You gotta chill. Alright, let's talk about Haikyuu to the Top now. So Haikyuu to the Top is the continuation to Haikyuu Season 3 when they fought Shira Torizawa. And this is really just a filler arc where they kind of build up the team and they face like the first match. And the first match, those guys literally had their backstory replaced by Shimizu's backstory. Like, they didn't get any hype. It would have been so easy for the writer to hype up their first match by just having them watch videos of their opponents playing. But instead of doing that, they do that in like a first 5-second flashback where they're like, oh, watch out for this guy's right hook. It's really strong. And they replace it with Shimizu backstory. So this whole season is really just catching up with our characters, seeing where they're at in their character development and how much further they can go. Except for Hinata, because they've spent like 6 episodes on Hinata's crazy man revelations. Like, Hinata's watching someone play and he's like, oh my god, that step, I know that move. Is that the tennis move? And I totally see what the writer was going to go for there, but the anime stretches this out for like 4 episodes, and I'm like, you don't need to do this for 4 episodes. We can get it within like half an episode. Another piece of really good character development is Kageyama's character development, where instead of like covering for his teammates' sloppy play, he would like get them to play better by forcing them to jump higher to reach the ball, stuff like that. I thought that was like a really good piece of character development for Kageyama. But just like Hinata, I was thinking like, I don't think you needed 2 episodes worth of time to get to that point in character development. This season totally feels like they were just stretching out bits of character development in such a way that they're able to dedicate a whole season to like say 1 match like they did with Shira Torizawa. And since we're on the topic of character development, Daichi and Sugawara and the other guy, they all meet up with Shimizu and we get some Shimizu backstory. We get some backstory for them. We get some character buildup for those guys and even the Date Bros, which is great. But if you're going to go through all the trouble of handing out character development scenes to pretty much anybody, even the Date Bros, well then you might as well hand out a character development to that one girl who gave Daichi the lucky charm, who fixed the banner that they had. Remember that girl? Remember Daichi's love interest? Remember that subplot? That subplot has literally gone nowhere. Did the writer just forget? Come on, I'm looking out for my bro Daichi here, man. Like, my bro Daichi, he's been working hard. Shimizu's already taken pretty much, so he's got to make a move and get his love side plot thing moving. The girls' volleyball team has literally had 0 development since that one time where they were inspired by Hinata. It would have been so nice to see where they're at. If we're just going to hand out character development to even the Date Bros, I think we need to touch base with the girls' volleyball team. Come on, guys. Or if you don't want to show us the girls' volleyball team, maybe just have her in the stands cheering on Daichi or something. Like, you don't have to give her too much, just have her there, have him hold on to the lucky charm or something. Have this plot go somewhere, please. All memeing aside, I think this season of Haikyuu was not too bad. It was okay. The beginning was kind of slow, but towards the end, it really picks up, and it's really trying to just build the hype to the top, right? They're trying to build up the hype for the next season, and they've succeeded. If that was their plan, I'm definitely hyped for the next season of Haikyuu. Alright, I want to talk about Kabukicho Sherlock now. So Kabukicho Sherlock actually started airing last season and it only finished this season. And I can say without a doubt that I hate it now. Actually, hate is maybe a strong word because I did end up finishing. I dislike it. I don't like the direction that they took the story. So, like It Invaded, Kabukicho Sherlock has mysteries. They have these weekly mysteries, but It Invaded ties all these weekly mysteries together towards one great mystery. And I thought they were going to do the same with Kabukicho Sherlock when they first introduced Jack the Ripper, but they kind of don't talk about Jack the Ripper for like 10 episodes or something, and when they finally get back to the Jack the Ripper main plotline, it's just so like, I don't even remember what's going on anymore. Like, Watson literally keeps telling him like, yo, can you look into my case? Yo, can you look into my case? And every time Sherlock just blows him off when it could be a perfect opportunity to let me know what's going on. I mostly stuck around because the music, the aesthetic, everything else surrounding the show was so unique and so interesting. You know, in a world full of moe blobs, they chose to do some stuff that wasn't cute and really not that marketable. At least I don't think so. It doesn't really have mass market appeal. And the way they mixed Rakugo with like Sherlock Holmes problem solving stuff was such an interesting way to kind of divulge information surrounding a case, because generally when you have murder mysteries, it's like, you were the murderer, and then they explain everything in kind of a montage, but this time it's explained via a really nice Rakugo scene, and it's just such an interesting take. Right now, it might seem like I hate the entire Kabukicho Sherlock, but I don't. I actually kind of liked the first core. The first core was not that bad. Sure, there were some trip-ups here and there, but for the most part, I did enjoy the characters. I did enjoy getting to know the world. But when we got to the second core, I was just like, what are these character assassinations? You create these characters and then just destroy them with stuff that they wouldn't do or has never been explained. So at the end of the first core, Moriarty is sent to jail and he's shown feeling remorse for his actions because he killed Jack the Ripper in revenge for his sister. and you know he's gonna drop the soap in jail, and you know this will happen, and he looks so beat up, and the story is making you think this has happened. But as it turns out, here's the big twist. Moriarty is actually a psychopath who feels zero emotion, so all that build-up, all that character build-up really doesn't matter, okay? Ignore all that stuff from season 1, because he's actually a psychopath, and he was just pretending to have emotion. And when he went into jail, get this, he has the ability to implant kill phrases inside people, where if you say the name of someone, they will commit suicide because he's able to mind control someone. This is never explained. The show up till that point, the murderers and all the stuff, all the logic wasn't that crazy. Yeah, sure, some of the cases were a little out there, but for the most part, it was all possible within the realm of possibilities. It wasn't too insane. I could see this happening in real life, kinda. But when you have stuff like, oh, I can actually mind control people by whispering in their ear, and then I give them a kill phrase, like this was never built up. And then he suddenly turns out to be a complete psychopath where all the character build up in season 1 literally doesn't matter. And here's the best part. They try and give him a redemption arc at the end of the season. And I'm just like, this guy can't be redeemed. He killed his own mom just to see what would happen. This guy's absolutely insane. You come to think of his dad as like a villain, but his dad knew his son killed his mom and he knew something was off, but he still didn't give his son therapy lessons and he just like let him out of jail. Like, this guy needs to be locked up. When I finished the show, I honestly felt nothing for the villain. I felt absolutely nothing for Moriarty. He killed countless people, and somehow I'm supposed to feel bad for him because, oh no, my sister's dead. I may have killed my mom. Haha, don't worry about it, man. Because we're friends. We're nakama, don't you see? It feels like they had 2 directors, one for the first core, one for the second core, and one guy wanted to do one thing, which was like, let's make Moriarty not the villain, and then the other director's like, haha, let's actually make Moriarty the villain. The disconnect between the first core and the second core was just too much for me to handle. On a side note, I think Watson and Sherlock were fine. The other detectives were fine characters. Everyone else was pretty good except for Moriarty. Everyone except for Moriarty. Moriarty ruined this entire show, if you ask me. You can kind of see that reflected in the Mal scores, because when it first came out, we were sitting at maybe like a 7 or an 8, but then it's dropped all the way to a 6 now. I think ultimately what killed this show for me is when Moriarty revealed to Sherlock that I implanted kill phrases inside people by mind controlling them to do my bidding, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, mind control is not how you write a good murder mystery. Especially when Moriarty just kind of learns mind control out of nowhere. I'm guessing he's always had this skill, he's always been able to manipulate people like this. You know what? I'm not going to think too hard about it. It definitely started in the first core at like a solid 7, maybe a 7.5, closing in on an 8. But then as the show got more and more episodes, it just started going steadily and steadily downhill until when we get to that stupid moment in the second core, it was like, this is a 4. This is trash. This is absolute garbage. Were I not invested in the side characters, I probably would have dropped this like ages ago. I also watched Isekai Quartet. Isekai Quartet is still fun. It's the second season. It's really enjoyable. I really liked it. The ending song is not as good as the first season's ending song, but that can be forgiven. In fact, the main thing I'd say about Isekai Quartet Season 2, though, is that unlike Season 1, there were so many allusions to stuff that hasn't happened in the anime yet. Like, a lot of the characters do stuff that, if you have read the light novel, if you know about the mythos of the world they come from, it's like, oh, I know what's going on here. But if you don't, you're like, oh, whatever, it's a nothing. Like, for example, Rosewald's seen holding a redacted, and based on what the redacted shows him, he ends up making his decisions based around what he's seen. So if you're like a light novel chat, and you've read the light novel for those works, you'll see a lot of fan service to stuff that an anime only wouldn't know yet. Those are all the shows I actually watched from start to end, but of course there are some shows I dropped in between, so I thought, what the heck, this video's already super long, might as well make it longer. So the first one up is going to be Bofuri. I dropped it at around episode 2 or 3. This show just did not grip me at all. I'm just so tired of the isekai formula. From what I saw, it wasn't terrible or bad. The pacing seemed fine. I think it's literally not the show. It's just me. I can't handle isekais anymore unless it's got some kind of crazy twist or it goes absolutely overboard with some of the more risque scenes. The next show on our honorable mentions list is going to be Kyoko Suiri. So I was actually really hyped for this show because I'm a big fan of Zetsu no Tempest, a anime relegated to the history books as no one ever talks about it anymore. Zetsu no Tempest was essentially Shakespeare, like it had a lot of references to Shakespeare's Tempest in an anime form, and it had some really, really crazy plot twists, and the soundtrack was phenomenal. Like, everything about Zetsu no Tempest was right up my alley at the time. I was a huge, Shakespeare nerd, and it was really fun to watch. So when I heard the writer had his own new anime coming out, Kyoko Suri, I was like, what the heck, I'm gonna watch it. And unfortunately, Kyoko Suri, I watched it up to episode 6 and I just could not handle the pacing anymore. The pacing was just so boring. It was off. The first couple episodes actually have a really, really good story beat. Everything kind of lands in place, and I was looking forward to where they were going to take the story. But from there, they like skip ahead 2 years because she's 17, and in the third or fourth episode she says she's 19, so they skip 2 years ahead, and it's clear that Kuro and our main character have been working together. Essentially the plot is like our main girl is a mediator for spirits, so whenever spirits have a problem they come to her and she solves them. The first problem we actually see her solve is like a murder mystery, and some of it is left up in the air, and it's a really well done bit. Like I really like the first kind of introductory arc, but from there we get into like the Steel Maiden arc that just drags on forever. Like get to the point already, solve the mystery, damn it. We could do so much more within these episodes. I felt like it was just dragging its heels every episode. Like they could have done so much more per episode, except for they kept wasting time on stuff that literally didn't matter. But I don't want to slam it too hard because I do plan on going back one day and finishing this show. Maybe not within the next few weeks, but I do plan on going back and finishing it just because the main girl's design is phenomenal. It's a masterpiece. Her design is great and her attitude is even more perfect. The chemistry is not there, but it's just the characters' interactions are just so good. So I do plan on going back someday. I heard from a buddy of mine who read the manga who said that this arc wasn't so bad and I need to get over it, so maybe I'll just read the manga instead. In fact, he said this is the worst arc and it can only go up from here, so I'll probably end up reading the manga instead. And finally, here we are. The final show I watched this season is Science Fell in Love, so I tried to prove it. The Japanese name is too long and I can't be asked to pronounce it because this show is actually pretty funny, but I just ended up dropping it because I didn't feel a need to watch the next episode. I feel like I saw enough based on the 4 episodes I watched. I may go back and watch it someday, but I think this show is probably going to get forgotten like Kyoko Suri or something. I don't think people are going to come back and watch this, but essentially the plot is you have a really nerdy guy and a really nerdy girl, and essentially they try and prove that they love each other using science. They're not geeky, they're just nerdy, and this is nerdy to the point where they're going to talk about actual science, they're going to talk about null hypotheses, they're going to talk about string theory, they're going to talk about stuff that you've probably never heard of like a Laplacian, essentially all to prove whether or not they're in love. It's really cute and it fills my heart with joy, but since my heart is already a soulless crust, I could not enjoy it as much as I thought I did. It's pretty good. I definitely recommend someone watch it. I hope it doesn't get forgotten, but it's probably going to get forgotten. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this video, please go out and watch it. It's watch one episode. Just watch the one episode. I hope this show doesn't get forgotten. In fact, it's a ONA, meaning it didn't air on TV. It only aired online, so hopefully they did well enough. I quite liked the show. I just couldn't finish it. I will go back and finish it. Maybe not this week or the next week or the week after that, but I will finish it one day. Like Kyoko Suri, it's on the backlog. It's earned itself a place on the backlog when I have maybe nothing else to watch. But I will give it a strong recommendation. If you're nerdy enough to understand what I meant by a null hypothesis or Laplacian, well then please go out and watch this show. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Now that I actually sit down and think about that show, ultimately I think what did the show in and kind of lowered its popularity is the fact that they kind of took one joke and stretched it out for too long. Like if they took all the really good jokes that they had about science and kind of scrunched it up into a 1-hour movie or maybe a half-hour special, I think it would have done way better. Maybe they could have added in more drama to spice it up, but then it would have lost the identity of the show. You know, it's hard to say, but I'll definitely give it like a solid recommendation and I'll put it on my back burner. Anyways, that's really all I have to say about the winter 2020 season. I thought it was pretty good. I know some people kind of think the anime seasons haven't been good for a while, but there was definitely plenty to watch this season, so I don't know what they're complaining about. If I missed the show you liked, well then recommend it. Maybe I'll check it out in the near future. Maybe I'll put it in the back burner. Anyways, that's really all I have to say. Remember to like, favorite, subscribe if you made it this far in this really long video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.